Imagine this. It's a clear day on August 14th, 2005. A modern passenger jet is flying over Athens, Greece, and it's been doing so for nearly 2 hours. But here's the thing. It's on autopilot, completely silent, and inside, all 121 people on board are completely unresponsive. This is the incredible, tragic story of Helios Flight 522 and how a totally routine flight somehow turned into a high-altitude ghost ship.
So that's the central mystery, right? It's a question that completely baffled investigators and, frankly, terrified the world. How on earth does a state-of-the-art airliner with a seasoned, experienced crew just go silent and cruise towards its own destruction?
Okay, so our story really kicks off in the skies over Greece. Air traffic controllers in Athens are looking at their radar and they see a Boeing 737 just enter their airspace. No permission, no radio call, nothing. They try to hail the plane again and again and again, but all they get back is radio silence. Right away, this triggers a massive security alert. Now, the flight had started off totally normal. A smooth takeoff from Cyprus, everything looking good. But then, just a little over 30 minutes later, as the plane is climbing up to its cruising altitude of 34,000 feet, poof, all contact is just lost. For the next hour and a half, that plane flew on like a ghost, which is what led the Greek Air Force to scramble fighter jets to go see what in the world was going on with this silent intruder. And what the F-16 pilots reported back, well, it was deeply, deeply unsettling. As they pulled up alongside the airliner and peered into the cockpit, they saw something that just didn't make sense. The captain's seat was empty. And when they looked into the main cabin, they saw passengers in their seats just sitting there, completely motionless, with all the oxygen masks dangling down from the ceiling. It was just this terrifyingly still, lifeless scene. To really get our heads around how this could have possibly happened, we actually have to go back in time, back to the night before the flight even took off. It turns out a single, incredibly simple error made during some routine maintenance work is what set this whole horrible tragedy in motion. It all came down to one tiny switch. All right, first, a really quick but absolutely crucial concept here, cabin pressurization. You know, when you're up at 34,000 feet, the air outside is way too thin to breathe. So planes have to pump conditioned air into the sealed cabin to basically create an artificial atmosphere that we can all survive in. This system isn't just a comfort feature, it is absolutely vital. And right here, this is where we find the root cause of the whole problem. The pressurization system has this little selector switch. It's got two modes, auto, which is for normal flight, and manual, which is used for tests on the ground. The night before, an engineer did a leak test, and, you guessed it, set the switch to manual. And the critical mistake? He simply forgot to flip it back to auto when he was done. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, but surely the pilots would have caught that, right? And they should have. I mean, they were both highly experienced. But what happened next was a devastating cascade of misunderstandings, combined with a deadly invisible enemy that meant a whole series of escalating alarms were completely misinterpreted. So let's walk through this chain of events. As the plane keeps climbing, it's not pressurizing. At 12,000 feet, a loud alarm starts blaring. But the pilots confuse it with a totally different alarm, one that should only ever go off on the ground before takeoff. This mix-up leads the captain to radio the ground engineer about the wrong problem entirely. And all the while, as they're trying to solve the wrong puzzle, the real danger was silently taking over. And that danger was hypoxia. See, it's not like holding your breath where you feel yourself gasping for air. It's much more insidious. As the oxygen level in your blood drops, your brain just slowly starts to shut down. Your ability to think clearly, to solve problems, it just evaporates, and you don't even realize it's happening. Just look at these symptoms of hypoxia: confusion, impaired judgment. There's even a false sense of well-being or euphoria. This explains exactly how two veteran pilots could miss something so fundamental. They weren't being careless. Their brains were being starved of oxygen. They were medically incapacitated. And it wasn't long after that last confused radio call that both pilots lost consciousness. So this brings us all the way back to that bizarre mystery that the fighter pilots saw. Remember, 2 hours after the flight crew went silent, a figure suddenly appears in the cockpit. Who on earth was this person? And how are they still conscious when everyone else was out? Well, investigators eventually figured it out. The man was Andreas Protomo. He was a flight attendant on the plane, but, and this is key, he also held a commercial pilot's license.
The reason he was still awake was that he had managed to use one of the portable oxygen cylinders from the main cabin. But here's the tragic reality of his situation. Each one of those portable oxygen bottles only provides about 15 minutes of air. 15 minutes. Protobumo was on borrowed time, literally moving from one bottle to the next, desperately trying to figure out how to save a plane that he was not trained to fly. The cockpit voice recorder captured his final heartbreaking efforts. He tried to send a mayday, a distress call, 5 separate times. But in his oxygen-starved state, it seems he forgot to actually press the transmit button. The fighter pilots saw him wave, just moments before the plane's left engine flamed out because it had finally run out of fuel. With no fuel, the Boeing 737 went into a rapid descent and crashed into the hills just outside Athens. Tragically, everyone on board was killed. The massive investigation that followed would uncover the full, painful story and lead to changes that hopefully made flying safer for all of us. So, the investigation basically pieced this whole tragic puzzle together. They found the pressurization switch, still in the manual position. They confirmed that the 2 critical cockpit alarms sounded way too similar. And the discovery of those used oxygen bottles told the heroic story of Prodamu and maybe other crew members who fought to stay conscious long after the pilots had already succumbed. But out of this terrible tragedy came a lasting and positive legacy. In the wake of Helios 522, real concrete safety improvements were made across the entire aviation industry. Warning alarms were redesigned so they'd be unmistakable. Pre-flight checklists became way more rigorous, and pilot training was updated to really hammer home the subtle, deadly signs of pressurization failure. When you get right down to it, the story of the ghost plane is just this stark reminder of that fragile link between us humans and the complex machines we build. And it leaves us with a really important question. As our technology gets more and more automated, how do we make sure that a simple human error, like forgetting to flip a switch, can never lead to such a catastrophic failure again?